In August of 2008, a maintenance worker found a deceased female in a stairwell of the abandoned Tuscan Park townhomes complex in Detroit, Michigan. The female had some minor signs of decomp indicating that she had been there for a little bit. She was said to have been between 19 and 21 years old, and she was found with a television cable wrapped around her neck and coming from an abandoned room on the floor closest to where she was found in that stairwell. The female was brought to a medical examiner's office, but an autopsy was not performed. An RAPE test was not done on her, and none of the evidence collected from the scene, including her clothing, the TV cable, anything, was tested for DNA. This was because the scene looked as if this was something that she had done to herself. For 2 years, this female laid waiting to be claimed by family before she was ultimately buried in a mass grave with other unidentified people as a Jane Doe. It wasn't until 2 years after she was buried and 4 years after she was found dead that she was identified as 13-year-old Breanna Sharp. Breanna's mother, Sabrina Sharp, and her father, Leonard Cobb, were high school sweethearts who played track together. They were in a relationship for quite some time before they ended up breaking things off because Leonard was moving down south to pursue sports during his college years. The two ended up reconnecting at some point while Leonard was still in college, and this is when he found out that Sabrina had had a baby, Breanna. Sabrina initially tried to say that Breanna's father was someone by the name of Craig. However, a paternity test was done, and Breanna's father was actually Leonard. Now, a few years later, Sabrina was struggling a lot, so she ended up sending Breanna down to go live with her father, Leonard, and Leonard said that while the two did have a close relationship and loved bonding over watching sports and stuff like that, Breanna did not want to live down there full time. She really wanted to get back home so that she could live with her mom, her mom's partner, and her stepsisters. It was around this time when Breanna started acting out and misbehaving in hopes to be sent back home to her mom, and that actually ended up working. Leonard sent her back and she began living with her mom full time, but her behavioral issues did not ever get better. As her anger issues got worse, which caused a lot of chaos and arguments between she and her mother, Sabrina, and she was even expelled from school for attacking a teacher. In July of 2008, it was stated that Breanna disappeared. She had ran away and nobody knew where she was. Investigators learned that around the time that Breanna had ran away, she was actually spotted by neighbors near the Tuscan Park townhomes with her stepfather, Damian Henderson. Remember, the Tuscan Park townhomes is where her body was ultimately found, about a block away from where she lived with her mom, her grandmother, her stepfather, and her step-siblings. Breanna was never reported missing by anyone that she lived with in Detroit, including her mother, and she was only reported missing because her father, Leonard, had realized that he hadn't heard from her in quite some time. July of 2008 to be exact. However, every time that Sabrina was contacted, she said that she was in contact with her daughter, and that despite her running away, she was still talking to her on the phone, despite never being able to prove that. Sabrina also said that Breanna ran away in June of 2009, which would have been 11 months after her father last spoke to her, and 10 months after Breanna's body was found in that stairwell of the abandoned townhome complex. And mind you, the entire time that Breanna was missing up until she was identified in 2012, her mother was collecting her state benefits. Now, after a lot of advocating by way of Leonard Cobb, Breanna's father, and pretty much none from Sabrina, her mother, investigators were searching a morgue's records in July of 2011 when they found a set of unidentified remains that were found in 2008 close by to where Breanna was living with her mom, and where Breanna was said to have last been seen with her mom's partner, Damian. This is when they found out that the remains had actually been buried amongst a mass grave with other unidentified people, so the remains needed to be exhumed. They were, and in June of 2012, a positive match came back showcasing that these remains were that of 13-year-old Breanna Sharp. When Breanna's mom and grandmother were told that Breanna was deceased and that she had been deceased since 2008, they showed little emotion and just began talking about her struggles with behavior and her gender identity. They immediately agreed with what the medical examiner determined at first, which was that Breanna did this to herself. Her father, on the other hand, Leonard, was extremely upset and frustrated. He believed that someone in Sabrina's family or Sabrina herself did something to Breanna because they viewed her as a liability. He believes that something happened and the scene was staged to make it look like Breanna did this to herself, but in reality, he said that he cannot imagine his daughter doing this. Now, because nothing was preserved, collected, or tested in 2008 when Breanna was first found, there is zero evidence that can be tested now. There is one note from the medical examiner's initial report back in 2008 that could offer some insight as to what may have happened to Breanna if there was an element of foul play involved. The note states that there was signs of blunt force trauma to the back of her head, indicating that someone may have hit her in the back of the head hard enough to either end her life or knock her out and then stage the scene. But we will never know because there was never an autopsy performed. They don't have a COD. They just immediately guessed and completely dropped the ball on this 13-year-old girl's justice. What do you guys think about this case, and what do you think happened to Breanna? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.